Good evening. We begin with the developing situation in the Strait of Hormuz. A major troop surge is underway as the deadline for the Hormuz Ultimatum rapidly approaches.
This is no longer just a military presence. This is an ultimatum taking shape over one of the most dangerous waterways on the planet. In the Strait of Hormuz, the pressure is rising by the hour. AH-64 Apache gunships are rotating through combat patrols. CH-47 Chinooks are pushing waves of troops and equipment into position. Warships are watching the skies. Radar screens are alive. Engines are hot. Crews are moving. And every new launch sends the same message. The next phase may already be underway. What makes this moment different is not just the firepower, it is the speed. The speed of detection, the speed of deployment, the speed of response. And once that kind of military machine begins to accelerate, events can move far faster than headlines can keep up. At a U.S. military base in the United Arab Emirates, there is no real pause in the work. Even before dawn, crews are already spread across the apron, moving between helicopters under floodlights and heat haze, checking fuel levels, inspecting pylons, loading munitions, and preparing aircraft for another cycle into the Gulf. The Apache crews know exactly what kind of environment they are operating in. The strait is narrow. The traffic is dense. The stakes are enormous. This is one of the most sensitive maritime choke points in the world. And every drone contact, every suspicious track, every unidentified movement has to be treated as a possible escalation. That is why the AH-64 Apache matters so much here. It is fast, it is lethal, and it is built to respond when reaction time becomes everything. Once rearmed and cleared, some Apaches lift off from land bases and head straight toward patrol zones over the water. Others move toward naval vessels in the Gulf, where they land on flight decks and sit at immediate standby, fully loaded and ready to launch within minutes. The pattern is relentless. Helicopters going out, helicopters coming back, helicopters holding over the sea, helicopters waiting on deck. Nothing in this cycle is random. It is designed to keep a constant envelope of pressure over the battle space. And here is where the situation becomes more dangerous. When a suspicious aerial contact appears, it is often a ship that sees it first. Radar operators inside the Combat Information Center track the object, check speed, heading, altitude, and behavior, and quickly determine whether it fits a hostile profile. If it does, the call moves fast. Air crews are alerted. Pilots already on station pivot toward the threat. Aircraft on deck spool up and launch. Every second matters, because if a hostile drone closes the distance, the cost of delay grows dramatically. The Apache was made for moments like that. With onboard sensors, targeting systems, and a 30mm chain gun that can tear through aerial threats at close range, the helicopter becomes a rapid response weapon system in motion. Pilots close in, lock on, engage, and confirm the destruction before the threat can reach a ship, an oil tanker, or a protected position. And then they do it again. Because this is not a one-time strike. It is a cycle of hunting, intercepting, reporting, resetting, and waiting for the next alert. Back at the base, that same tempo continues on the ground. Once an Apache returns, the turnaround begins immediately. Fuel lines come in. Weapons crews move under the stub wings. Fresh ammunition is loaded. Systems are checked. Panels are inspected. Connectors are secured. Every rocket pod, every missile rail, every belt of 30mm rounds is part of the larger rhythm of keeping those helicopters in the air. Hydra rockets are reloaded into their pods. Hellfire missiles are mounted with care. The chain gun drum is filled again. The aircraft is tested, cleared, and pushed back into readiness. This is what sustained combat posture looks like. Not dramatic speeches, not symbolic movement, but crews working non-stop so that when the next contact appears, the response is already prepared. But the Apache is only half the message. The other half arrives with a completely different kind of sound. The deep, unmistakable rotor thunder of the CH-47 Chinook. And this is where the title of this story starts to mean something much bigger. Because when Chinooks begin moving in force, the signal changes. Attack helicopters tell you a military is ready to fight. Heavy lift helicopters tell you it is ready to expand. That is the difference. An Apache can destroy a target. A Chinook can reshape the battlefield. The CH-47 is not designed for elegance. It is designed for mass, endurance, and movement. It carries troops. It carries supplies. It carries ammunition, support gear, communications packages, maintenance teams, and everything needed to turn a military posture into a sustained operation. When Chinooks start pushing large numbers of personnel across a theater, commanders are no longer thinking in short bursts. They are building depth. And depth changes everything. Because now it is not only about immediate strikes or fast interceptions. Now, it becomes about who can hold the line, who can reinforce faster, who can sustain the tempo longer, who can respond to multiple flashpoints at once. That is why reports of Chinooks moving thousands of troops into position carry so much weight. Whether those personnel are being staged for base defense, maritime security, logistics support, rapid reaction duties, or a broader contingency posture, the meaning is the same. This is not a light footprint. This is a growing military architecture. And once that architecture is in place, pressure becomes much harder to reverse. You can see it in the movement itself. A Chinook comes in heavy and loud, descending through dust and heat as ground crews rush to secure the landing zone. Troops unload in sequence. Gear follows. Pallets come off. Vehicles move in. Equipment is transferred. Then the helicopter lifts again, often before the dust has even settled, heading for the next point in the chain. One sortie does not mean much on its own. But repeated over and over, across multiple landing zones, multiple aircraft, and multiple rotations, it becomes the kind of logistical surge that signals serious intent. And that is exactly what makes this moment so tense. Because the real power of a deployment is not what appears in a single video clip. It is what keeps happening off camera. More crews, more equipment, more ammunition, more fuel, more aircraft, more people in more places, all tied together by one expanding operational picture. That picture extends beyond the helicopters already in theater. Nearby airstrips also become part of the machine. Transport aircraft bring in replacement parts, ammunition, and sometimes even entire helicopter airframes that have to be reassembled and returned to service. When an Apache arrives by cargo aircraft, it does not simply roll out ready for combat. The process is methodical. Crates come off first. Rotor blades, fairings, pylons, and support components are moved carefully. Then the helicopter itself is unloaded and towed to an assembly area where mechanics begin rebuilding it for operational use. This matters more than most viewers realize. Because every replacement airframe, every new crate of rockets, every additional load of Hellfire missiles, every maintenance component arriving in theater tells the same story. This operation is being sustained, not staged. That means planners are preparing for duration. And duration is what turns pressure into dominance. Meanwhile, out over the water, the patrol cycle does not stop. A shipboard combat team identifies another suspicious track. Alarm tones cut through the noise of the operations center. Pilots on standby move. An Apache sitting on deck spins up. Rotor speed climbs. The aircraft rises, pivots, and drives toward the contact zone. Another crew, already airborne, shifts course and joins the intercept picture. The pilots are not guessing. They are working from tracked data, sensor feeds, and layered command input. They close the distance, identify the target, and prepare to fire. If the threat is confirmed, the engagement happens fast. A burst from the chain gun, a target hit, debris falling into the sea. A call back to the ship. Kill confirmed, patrol resumed. And for a few minutes, the corridor is stable again. Until the next alert. That repetition is part of the strategy. Because military dominance in a place like Hormuz is not built through one spectacular strike. It is built through relentless control of tempo. If your aircraft can launch faster, track faster, reinforce faster, and return to the fight faster, then the burden shifts to the other side. Suddenly, every hostile move becomes riskier. Every drone launch becomes less certain. Every attempt to pressure shipping lanes or military positions faces a shorter reaction window. That is the real effect of this buildup. It changes what is possible. For commanders on one side, that means more options. For hostile actors on the other, it means fewer. And then there is the psychological impact. The sight of Apache gunships cycling between land bases, naval decks, and patrol lanes is not only tactical, it is also symbolic. It tells allies that cover is present. It tells shipping traffic that someone is watching. And it tells adversaries that if they are testing limits, those limits are now guarded by aircraft already in motion. The Chinooks send a different but equally powerful message. They say this is not a narrow mission. This is not a token deployment. This is a force that can grow. And once heavy lift assets start moving at scale, military planners gain something extremely valuable: flexibility. Troops can be repositioned quickly. Security teams can reinforce vulnerable points. Logistics hubs can be expanded. Forward operating locations can be supported. Emergency extraction plans become more viable. Reserve units can be shifted where needed without waiting for slower strategic lift to solve every immediate problem. In plain terms, Chinooks make the posture more dangerous because they make it more adaptable. And adaptability is what keeps pressure alive in a crisis. Now put both aircraft into the same picture. Apache gunships overhead. Chinooks moving the weight below. Warships holding the line at sea. Ground crews feeding the machine on land. That is no longer just deterrence. That is layered military pressure. One platform hunts. One platform moves. One protects the corridor. One fills it with capability. Together, they create something much more serious than a routine regional deployment. They create an ultimatum backed by mobility, firepower, and the ability to keep going. And here is the part most people miss. The Strait of Hormuz does not need a full-scale war to become a global crisis. It only needs disruption. A handful of successful drone strikes, a damaged tanker, a hit on a naval vessel, a spike in insurance risk, a sudden fear that shipping cannot move safely. That is why so much force is being concentrated around this narrow stretch of water. The stakes are not limited to one fleet or one coast. They spill into energy markets, alliance politics, military credibility, and regional deterrence. A disruption in Hormuz does not stay in Hormuz. So when Apaches launch over the Gulf and Chinooks move troops into position, the message is aimed far beyond the immediate horizon. It is aimed at everyone watching. At sea, on shore, in command centers, in capitals, and in markets. The message is simple. This corridor will not be surrendered easily. As daylight fades and another operational cycle begins, the same choreography repeats with even greater urgency. An Apache lifts from a ship's deck into the evening sky. Another clears the runway from a desert base and heads toward patrol lanes over the water. Elsewhere, a Chinook descends into a forward zone, unloading another wave of personnel, support gear, and mission-critical equipment before rising once more into the haze. Radar operators continue scanning. Deck crews stay ready. Mechanics keep turning wrenches. Pilots wait for the next call. This is what an ultimatum looks like when it is no longer delivered through words. It is delivered through readiness, through repetition, through visible force, through the ability to strike, reinforce, and sustain all at once. And that is why the situation in Hormuz is so volatile tonight. Because once a military machine reaches this level of readiness, the margin for miscalculation narrows. One hostile launch, one wrong move, one misread signal, one aggressive test at the wrong time. That is all it can take to turn a tense deployment into a live confrontation. And if that moment comes, the first sign may not be a press conference or a breaking news banner. It may be something much smaller. A radar contact, a command call, a deck launch, a Chinook landing in a cloud of dust, an Apache turning straight into the threat. And by the time the world catches up, the ultimatum will already be in motion.